All right. It's kind of hot. Good evening. Today's May 31st. This is our 10th episode of Unpacking White Supremacy in the Mental Health Field. We have a special guest today that we're going to have come on in a minute. I'm just going to let the live run so that people can join us. My voice is a little like choppy because I had an interesting weekend with my family, to say the least. So, and it's hot. I'm in my attic, and so it's really hot up here. I was going to choose a different location to do this live, but I realized I have dogs everywhere, and so I didn't want the dogs to like end up barking in the middle of a conversation. So I'm staying in the attic, and I got some paper towels here, Viva paper towels, which are the best in case I sweat. As you know, the intention of this IG live series is to bring awareness to how white supremacy impacts the mental health field, not just mental health professionals, but also the clients that we serve. And the reason why I think it's important to bring awareness to this is that maybe, possibly, with enough awareness, we can have some real change happen. And so that's the intention of it all. My name is Antonio Morales. I am the founder of the Liberated Self Therapeutic Services, LLC. And in order to find out information about that particular private practice, you can go to theliberatedself.org. Now, as some of you know, this live series is constantly being deleted, the replays at least, from Instagram. And so we did 9 episodes so far, and we have only 3 left that haven't been deleted. So 6 of them have been deleted, and 3 of them still exist. And so because Instagram continues to delete these videos or these live replays, I have posted them on YouTube. And so in order for you to go and get them on YouTube, I got like heat exhaustion, to be honest with you. So in order for you to see the replays, you can go to theliberatedself.org/unpacking white supremacy. And there you will find all of the lives that we previously have done or recorded. And when you click on each image, you'll be able to be connected to the YouTube channel that they exist on. Okay, so that's that. I understand and know that the topic of white supremacy can make people feel uncomfortable because they don't understand the context of how I'm using it. And so I'm imagining that's probably the reason why the algorithms are sort of getting our videos deleted, or if there's some Karens and Kens sort of reporting them. So I was thinking of like changing the word up, maybe like male supremacy or male supremacy, because maybe that won't get deleted, right? The word male. Instead of white is male supremacy, but we know what we're talking about. I was thinking about snow religiosity or osity. You know, thinking of ways to not get our videos deleted. But anyway, that's just me sort of thinking out loud. In the meantime, today's guest is, and welcome to the 3 people that are here. Shout out to Josh X Diva and Dimple 3124 for being in the house. Everybody else is at the beach already, which is where I'm going to go next. So today's guest is my brother Jaran D Manzanet, and I actually met this brother through the lives because he used to be one of the people that would participate in the conversations, you know, as a guest. And so I felt like he had a lot of interesting points and a lot to contribute. And so we linked up and had a conversation, and I figured he'd be a great person to be a guest on this particular live series because I feel like, again, he has a lot to contribute, and I'm digging his energy. This brother is pretty dope, and I just wanted to hear his voice and get a chance to understand what his story is like or what he's experienced or witnessed himself in the mental health field. He is an MSW, and he's a recent graduate, but I feel like there's so much that he can sort of contribute to this conversation. So he's going to be our guest today, and I hope I didn't mess up your name, brother. I'll have you introduce yourself anyway, so that we can get into it. Anyway, I'm going to... Jaran, can you find a way to... Let me see how do I add? All right, let me get you in here. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So, Mr. Jaran, I invited you, and I'm not sure if you see it. The invite. It's way too hot up here. Like at least I got my Ninja Turtles. I see my sister's on this. Hola, sister. Jaran, do you see the invite? There you go.
Okay, so it wasn't working on the on the laptop, on the desktop. And thank you for those wonderful words. What you were going through and what you were talking about just now.
What's going on, my brother?
Everything's great, bro. Everything's great. I love it. So let's start off with the start offs.
Wait, espérate. Did I mess up your name?
Oh yeah, you did. Started off with. So yeah.
So it's not Jaran.
Nah, never.
What is it?
Jaran.
Ave Maria. How was I supposed to know that?
Yo, listen, the J's pronounced like an H.
Oh, it's okay.
You know, so.
Haran.
Yep.
Bro, I thought it was Jaran.
Yeah, I mean,
why can't it be Jaran, right? It could be Jaran in other places, in other contexts.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Haran. I always thought your name was Jaran. I never knew it was Haran.
No, I understand that. I get it. It's okay.
Do you get that often?
Oh yeah, you have no idea. So so obviously we're gonna be talking about white supremacy. So
absolutely.
So going in, working in white spaces, it's, oh, your name is Jaran? Darren? It's like, no, it's not any of that. Please get it right. And, oh, Aaron, no, it's not. That's not what I said.
So this experience in today's live already is something you're used to.
Yeah.
Like having people jack up your whole name.
Yes. Always. It's always something that I've dealt with throughout my whole life, and it's funny because my mom used to say that kids would always say my name better than adults, right?
Yeah.
And I realized, no, it's mostly non-Hispanic, Latinx, Black people
who say it the right way.
Who say it wrong.
Who say it Jaran.
Yeah. So only white people say my name that way.
Wait, who says it the right way?
Everybody that's Black, brown, people of color, indigenous.
I didn't say it the right way.
Hey, listen.
That's that European
colonizer. No. Listen, you want to know what it is? You want to know what it is?
What up?
I think it's because we're accustomed to trying to say things phonetically, right? Okay. So you're automatically gonna go with what? You're gonna go with the J, right?
Right.
But notice how as soon as I told you how to say it, you said it perfectly. You were like, "Oh yeah, duh, that makes sense."
Right.
So
it does make sense.
Yeah, see, I would never fault you for that.
but it's just interesting because look, my real name is supposed to be Antoine.
Right.
Antonio. I mean, I say that some of my peers call me Antoine because I'm such a Black Panther. So instead of calling me Antonio, I'm Antoine. But I can't stand when people translate it to Anthony. I
Right.
refuse. Listen, I refuse. Antonio's already like still a white supremacist name, but don't
Right.
go all the way to the Anthony part now. I mean, they're both the same, but you know what I'm saying. All right, Mr. Jaran.
We here.
So before you introduce yourself formally, right? I like to do with all of my guests an icebreaker to find out where you come from. So this is the way of celebrating your people, celebrating your elders and your ancestors. And so the question I'm going to ask you as an icebreaker is, where do your people come from, right? And what positive attribute or characteristic have you inherited from them?
Oh,
and
wow.
how does that show up in your life today?
Okay. So I would say all right, so I go for the jugular. I'm Taino ancestry, right? So that's Caribbean, out of Puerto Rico. So that's how I normally identify. Right?
Okay.
And when it comes to characteristics, I believe a positive characteristic that I inherit from my people is the ability to fight against injustice.
It's like that. I feel like several guests have mentioned the sort of same warrior spirit.
Right.
And I think where that comes from is like the idea that because we live in a world that's designed to intentionally oppress us, we have no choice but to become the warrior inside of that context.
Right. That's a perfect way to say it. Yeah.
Right. And some of us don't sort of move forward with that warrior spirit because maybe we feel defeated, but some of us we can't take it. We can't tolerate it. So it brings out the warrior spirit. And so when you think about that, and I'm using the term warrior spirit. I don't know if that's something you would sort of acknowledge, but when I'm thinking about sort of that characteristic or attribute, how do you say that sort of shows up in your world today?
Well, it's funny that you say warrior spirit, right? So there's two things that I take away from that. One, obviously our ancestors weren't necessarily warriors, but they had to be because they were taken over and conquered, right?
Yeah.
And then two is through my background and everything that I put, if you look at tags and stuff like that, I use mixed Latino X social work warrior, right?
Uh-huh.
A lot of that has to do growing up in martial arts, learning that you have to love yourself because you are a warrior. You have to love yourself in order to become a warrior. So I think that's kind of great.
Okay. So do you see how it sort of shapes the way you move in the world?
Oh yeah, it's like the way you said it, I think is kind of important because I never considered myself to be like a warrior per se, right? But within the last couple of years, I want to say that I've shifted my focus to more social justice. And in order for you to be in social justice, to be an activist, to be an advocate, you have to be a warrior for those who don't normally have a voice themselves.
Right. Because it's not easy, right, to be an advocate, especially when it seems like everything works against the advocacy part, right? Like, how dare you, consider the humanity of people who we're not supposed to consider as human beings, right? Which are Black and brown folk in particular.
Right.
And there's a lot of resistance to even acknowledging the fact that we might actually be human beings too, with feelings and emotions and a whole bunch of shit that's attached to our humanity, right?
It's true.
And so and at least I find this in my experience, like the resistance, even mentioning things that sort of talk about, social justice, right? And I always talk about white supremacy because to me that's the root of it all, right? But even mentioning that, I mean, the resistance doesn't only come from our fellow white counterparts, but even Black and brown people who either don't understand it or they just don't got the time for that, right? Because they just feel like it doesn't affect them yet, or they don't know how it affects them. And so then we get sort
But
of,
they just don't see it, right? They
they
don't
don't see it. Yeah.
be aware of it completely. And I think sometimes we definitely we isolate ourselves from it.
Mm.
Like we tend not to want to deal with it, and we avoid issues. Like whenever we have issues when it comes to like family, right? We isolate from our family. We definitely want to stay away from certain family members when it comes to issues and trouble when it comes to that. Or you have family members that want to keep you quiet. Like I know there have been times where people will say something racist or there's something that's a little bit a little bit messed up. You need to stop real quick. And what happens? It's the it's the look of, wait, you shouldn't be talking like that. You shouldn't be mentioning that. That's not a place. You're not supposed to be talking about that now. But when are we supposed to be talking about it?
Yo, you know what's so crazy, bro? Like you brought something up. It's funny because one of my sisters is on here too.
Right.
And I think I mentioned that this weekend with the whole family trip we took. But one of my sisters, okay, one of my cousins passed away, and a lot of my family members died early, earlier, during sort of prematurely. That's the way I could describe it. And one of my cousins in particular passed away maybe 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago. And I had, because it was like I believe it was during the time like the whole racial unrest that was happening in America. Plus, I was dealing with the racial discrimination in my last workplace. And then my cousin passes, right? And so I was very clear that when I think about all the factors that led to his death, it was grounded in white supremacy. I was very clear about it. Like, when you think about all of the things that he had to sort of brush up against in his life, it actually took his life away from him.
Right.
But it was all these sort of things, these details that no one paid attention to, while he was alive. And I remember that I was going through my grieving process, and I called one of my sisters, and I won't mention your name, but I called one of my sisters because I was just grieving. So I left a WhatsApp message to her talking about how I was so sad because I knew and understood that white supremacy led to his early death.
Right.
All the factors that come into play in his life, or in his life when he was here. And my sister never called me back. She never left a message and responded. I mean, I was like crying. I was not like talking like, like this. It was like I was having a moment, but I was clear about what I was saying. And my sister never responded back to me because she thought that me talking about white supremacy was me attacking white people. And it really wasn't. I was not even thinking about white people per se. I was thinking about the structures and ideology of white supremacy that sort of impacts our lives in a negative way.
Right.
And so, and my own sister wasn't having the conversation, even though I needed her comfort in that moment. Right. But that, what you was talking about, like sort of avoid, we can't talk about that ever.
It's one of those things where it's a touchy subject, right? Because if you have family that's different shades and some are more white passing than others, then it becomes an issue. It becomes something that's, well, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yo, that is it, bro. And I think that's what happens when you think about how mixed we are as a people, as a community, right? We have some of us who are more brown and dark, right? And going to the darker and black side. And then we have some of us that are very European, right? And sort of going to the white side. And it sort of creates this sort of different dynamic between our lived experience, like you're mentioning, right? And I think, like, for example, like my people would be Puerto Rican and some of us are Dominican. And I think what that's about is like, there's no awareness of each other's lived experience, even though we might all be Boricua. Like, there's no, like, I don't know what it's like to be all the way light like you, like white, right? But you don't know what it's like to be dark.
Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not white.
No, I don't mean like, no, I didn't mean you. No, I didn't mean you. I mean like in general.
Yeah, I know.
My bad.
Nah, it's okay. I like
that. You, I mean.
It's okay.
You get that a
lot? No. You want to know what's funny is that, like, I'm a weird complexion, right? So I'm not hot, like I'm not white, and I'm not dark. I'm like somewhere like in an in-between shade.
Yeah.
That kind of puts me at a place where it's white people know I'm not white. And they look at me and they'll always say, well, what are you, mixed or something? And I'm like, I am mixed, but okay. But I'm not white.
Yeah, no, yeah, yes. So I was not talking about you. I was just in general.
I like
But yeah, and I think that creates the disconnect with family members and our different lived experience based on race, based on the complexions of our skin. And people call it colorism a lot of time, but I just call all of it white supremacy, even though it shows up as colorism, right? Because it's all in the same. It's all in the. It's the same root, right? It's the same fucking tree, just different leaves, right? So yeah. So anyway, we went on a side rant.
It's okay.
Okay, so now that we're here and we're sort of in this conversation, I would love for you to formally introduce yourself and talk about what you're currently doing right now as far as your position and how long you've been in social work and what sort of motivated you or inspired you to become a social worker or a mental health professional.
Okay, that's a lot.
I can shut up now.
No. So my name is Jaran David Manzanet. I'm an MSW. I currently work for a corporate nonprofit organization called Year Up. I'm a student service manager, so that means I work with opportunity youth between the ages of 17 and now, or 18 and 29 now, right? So before it was 18 to 26, now we've extended it to, so it's basically getting people, Black, Indigenous, people of color into opportunities in the corporate field, right? That they normally wouldn't have to create or give them an opportunity for to close the opportunity divide, right? I've been working in this position just over 2 months, and I've been working in social work for over 8 years. What led me to this point in my life, I want to say, is the opportunity to get into Europe was the idea of being able to provide a wraparound of supports for participants to promote equitable access to higher earning potential, career growth, and improved quality of life. The reason why I got into social work has to do with an incident that I had at Steve Madden. So I was working at Steve Madden.
Isn't that like a shoe store or something? Okay,
yeah.
Okay, go.
Yeah, so I was
Somebody said, Prov STEW said, my man is changing the world. That's why I don't know if you saw that. I just wanted to let you know.
That's cool. Shout out to Proverb. Proverbial stew.
That's what that is. Okay.
let's go. So I was working at Steve Madden, and it's high end, right? So, or it's mid end. It's not even high end if you really want to be into it. So it's high end shoe fashion, and as I was working there, it was the fact that I was dealing with one white woman, and she wanted me to get her several different pairs of shoes, and I came up, gave her 5 pairs of shoes, went back downstairs, got her another 7 pairs, came back up, was doing all of this stuff for this white woman. And when I turned to help Latin woman speaking Spanish, I started speaking Spanish to her. She came back. She was like, "You don't have to be a spick."
What?
What? I said, "What? I don't have to be a spick?" Say less. Say less. I went downstairs and I tried to compose myself, and I told my manager, who just happened to be white at the time, that I couldn't deal with this customer, and they told me that I had to deal with the customer. I said, "Nah, I don't have a college degree, and I'm gonna be dealing with a white woman who's calling me a spick, and I don't feel like this is gonna be conducive to my health."
Yeah.
So after that, I called up my friend Twin, and he was like, "Nah, I know a place where you can work at. Don't worry about it. You got your college degree. You're working. You can work here because of your background, and you're good." And I got the job. I think a couple of months later, working at Gateway Counseling Center in the Bronx.
Okay.
HabSpec. So I was working as a habilitation specialist.
Okay.
And that's how I got into the field.
So that's how you got your feet wet.
Yeah, that's definitely how I started it.
Because you dealt with discrimination in the workplace.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to like sort of unpack that a tiny little bit. Like,
Go ahead.
so that experience obviously impacted you, right? Because you
Yeah.
felt whatever you felt in that moment. But what was the inspiration? I mean, when you go into the next position that you went into, what was the inspiration that kept you going? Like, what's the inspiration behind sort of what sort of gives you your sort of social justice-y sort of vibe?
Um, Working with individuals with intellectual disabilities was really difficult because it was something that I had never done before, and I loved every minute of it. But I also knew that they needed a voice, and in every aspect, I felt like I needed to be their advocate, and I was their advocate because most of the time their parents didn't see them on I don't want to say on a human level, but they didn't see them as an adult. So
Mm.
you had people that were, let's say, age 35, and they thought they were still children.
Mm.
They definitely didn't allow them to feel like an adult. And most of the time, when I speak to these individuals on the side, they wanted to be treated like adults. And in social justice, you have to be able to treat everybody with equity, not equality, it's equity. And when we're here, we're talking about certain things when it comes to just being heard, right? You're doing this because you want to be heard. We're speaking against social justice or white supremacy because people want to be heard. Because obviously there have been injustices throughout our lives, and we've all had lived experiences, whether we acknowledge it or not, that have impacted us. And a white woman calling me a spick was one of the injustices that I had to deal with. And I think that was more like the tipping point.
Right.
Right. And being a social justice advocate, I think is really important based on the fact that everybody needs a voice and people sometimes don't know how to speak up for themselves. And I know it's taken me a long time to speak up against certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I've never really found my voice, but I feel like I'm getting traction now.
Right, right. Got it. I got it. And I understand. I think there's so many of us in the world who feel like we don't have a voice. So to sort of have somebody sort of be the advocate for us makes a huge difference because some people might never ever have an advocate, right? And so they might sort of live their whole lives all the way to the end, never sort of standing up for themselves because it's almost like no one has given them permission to, especially when you think about marginalized communities where, we're continuously being given messages saying to us, right, or teaching us or conditioning us to believe that, we don't have a right to speak up or exist or to anything, basically. We just got to take just deal with it. Whatever is thrown at us, just deal with it.
They always want us to take the L. That's what it is.
Take the L.
They want
take the L. Y'all was designed for this.
Yeah.
Take the L. Y'all should be. And we're like, nope. And so I understand now sort of what inspires you, like sort of giving the voice to the voiceless.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we know we talk about white supremacy, right? So let's get into it.
Okay.
So in your own words, and there's no right or wrong way to define this, but I want to hear from you, your perspective. How would you, in your words, define white supremacy?
White supremacy is the ideology that white people are considered dominant to every other race and ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is, plain and simple.
Plain and simple. It's funny. I'm not gonna go into forget it. No, I want to because we recently had these shootings happening, right? These mass shootings, right? These examples of mass murder, mass violence. Whether in Buffalo or in Texas, and when I think about that, I've been thinking about that. It's been really hard to sort of grapple with, even though one person was like a self-professed white supremacist, and another person was a Latino kid. All of it is white supremacy because if you think about the history, the way the Western world was dominated in the first place, right? The new world, as they call it, through colonization. all of it came through violence. Like our whole entire existence was birthed in violence, right? The whole Western world was impacted by it. And so when I see these many versions of sort of mass violence, we could sort of connect that back to the giant versions of mass violence, right? When you think about the indigenous people that were here, right, and how they were sort of, their lands were taken over, how, you know, Europeans came with the smallpox and they came with their guns, right? Guns was one of the tools used for colonization, right? Because the native people here had the bow and arrows and shit, right? They didn't have the guns. And so that was one of the ways that the Western world, the Western hemisphere was colonized. And so when we talk about this, when we see this gun violence, right, it reminds me always of white supremacy, even if it's a Latino kid doing the shooting, because we internalize that shit and emulate it.
You're right. And I'm glad that you said it, because yeah, he may have been Latino, but guess what? It goes to the fact of assimilation. How many people of black and brown skin tone, right, have you heard of have mass shootings?
Not a lot.
I on record, I don't remember any.
Right. I don't.
On record, I don't remember any. So that's embedded in white supremacy.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
even you also have to look at the state in which he was in. He was in Texas, right? Which is a predominantly red state. Not okay then. So the ideal of assimilation is prevalent through white supremacy.
And when we assimilate inside of the context of white supremacy, we start to emulate their behavior.
Yes.
Right. So even though we look like, I even when I think about when I think about the ways we even treat each other in our families, right? Yeah. There's this way of being dominant always. I gotta dominate, right? Where you feel like the oppressed becomes the oppressor, right? In the small little microscopic ways, but it creates a whole lived experience for so many of us that sort of impacts our lives. But all of it is white supremacy.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? There's like no way to like separate it. Like there's no way. And then, you know what's crazier for me? Because a lot of those kids were Latino kids, right?
Right.
And the fact that the law enforcement took forever, that I don't know what that means. But that I don't even have the words. I mean, I'm just saying. So
they're not willing to protect us.
Our lives don't matter.
Nah, they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they can go in and get their kids, though.
Yo.
They can go in and get their kids, but they can't save all the children, right?
I'm getting triggered. Yeah.
Those are the facts when it comes to it, and it's sad. It hurts us because when it comes down to it, it just goes back to the idea of being a minority. Right? And I hate using that term. I hate using the word minority because it's grounded in being less than. Right?
It sure is.
So marginalized, maybe. But in this instance, we're being seen as less than, so we are a minority.
Like our concerns, our fears, the things that matter to us is minor in comparison to the majority.
Right.
Right, our lived experience. So, I mean, I didn't know I was gonna sort of bring that up, the shootings, but how could we not? Right, we can't talk about white supremacy in the context of this conversation and not consider, because we as mental health professionals we have to understand this is impacting our communities.
Right.
Whether you live in Texas or Buffalo or not, it doesn't matter. You know, in real life, you could be next.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And I think that's the hard part to sort of grapple with as not only as mental health professionals, but thinking about the people we serve. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, how are we supposed to, like, someone said that Jelly B Unspoken said collective impact. It's a collective impact.
That's wifey right there.
Wifey, what up, wifey? What up, Jelly B Unspoken? Yeah, so collective impact, that's it. It's a collective impact and it's collective generational racial trauma that continues and continues and continues year after year.
Sure.
Now, with that being said, when you think about your experience in the mental health field, right?
Yeah.
Can you give me 3 examples? And you don't have to get into each example like thoroughly because we're going to choose one. But can you give me 3 examples of how you've seen or witnessed white supremacy show up in the mental health field?
Sure. So I think the redistribution or allocation of funds that never really benefit the neighborhood, but line the pockets of those that like serve on their boards. So that's like dress code policies in general. And most nonprofits are run by white people or maybe white men in general. So it's not even white people because white women mostly aren't really on those boards. They are run by white men. So when we're talking about like patriarchy, that's a really good sign of it. And we're talking about nonprofits that's supposed to help marginalized communities. These are things that we see on a daily basis.
You mean the non-for-profit industrial complex?
Of course.
The one that go into poor communities and get all this funding to serve ticket, that's what they say, but then shit doesn't happen. I don't see that. I mean, look, I worked for not-for-profits for a few times in my life. I think the work was okay, but I just felt like it was all about the funding. Like we was driven by funding. We had to meet quotas, right? Even if we had to sort of mess with the numbers, if you know what I mean. And so, yeah, I feel like the profit part, right, is what, even though it's not for profit,
yeah,
there's a profit part. There's still profit there.
There's always,
like that taints the work.
There's always going to be a profit.
Yeah.
Somebody's always going to see the silver lining. I mean, we live in a capitalist nation where the idea is to always make a profit. You're always trying to make a buck. And when you have, like Jelly Bean Unspoken says,
yes,
you have boards not matching the community and individuals that we're serving, it's completely true. I mean, I guess I want to speak on that too, because I guess my next point of one of the examples is every nonprofit organization that I've worked for at the time of my employment has been run by white men. So that's something that says, like, how can you know what my community needs or the community I work with, or how can you know that you are serving our needs? You don't know who we are, what we like, or what's to our benefit. But at the end of the day, if you look at any website and their organization, and you look at their CEO, their board of directors, you look at all of them, none of them fit the description of the people that you would have seen in the community that you're serving.
Yeah. So I mean, you want to unpack that, because the next prompt is to get the one example. Is that the one example you want to unpack?
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
so let's talk about that. So continue. What are you gonna say?
So I mentioned Gateway Counseling Center earlier, right? So that was one place. So the whole board was white, right? But everybody under us, everybody that was working there was a person of color who worked in the community or lived in the community. So how is it that we are serving the community, but yet you don't know how to allocate the funds for everybody that's there? You're making, like Jelly Bean says, how are you making 6 figures and everybody else is trying to make ends meet, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, how is it that we're working minimum wage and the CEO is making over $200,000 a year? I don't get it. How? Why? Because he had a master's degree? Nah, I don't believe that. You were making, and I saw this. He was making close to more than $500,000 a year.
What?
Right? But it was a non-for-profit organization. How?
Almost $500,000.
How? How are you making that much money?
Well, how? Was there any explanation, or you never delved into?
I never went.
It was just like a question that you've been stuck with.
Yeah, I could never understand it, right? then you go to then I worked at Adapt Community Network and the Jewish Board, right? So look at that. Those are two other organizations that had all white male counterparts that worked on the boards, and they were all making high six figures. But everybody else who has a bachelor's degree is making what, minimum wage or just above minimum wage. It makes no sense whatsoever to me. I can't understand it. How is it that we're in a cycle, right? We're in a cycle that's constantly putting us against each other to try to scratch and fight for $1. Somebody else is out here making $500,000, right?
Yes.
But you're working as the CEO of a not-for-profit organization. I don't get it. How are you redistributing the wealth through the chain of command here?
But I guess the point is not to redistribute the wealth, right? I guess the point is just to keep the program running for as long as possible so they can keep getting paid.
Yeah. Right.
Regardless of whether it's effective or not anyway. Like, it's just,
no.
We're here to serve the community, and we're going to get, I feel like when I think about what you're saying was sort of, and I felt this way before, but like sort of you bringing it back up for me, it's like there's this exploitative nature when it comes to not-for-profit. And it's not to say that, let's just make this very clear. We don't want to say, I don't think it's fair to say that all not-for-profits, are grimy, right? But we see the ones that aren't and the ones that are, right? If you're part of those organizations.
You can definitely attest to that. These are just the ones that I have worked for, and I had never researched for to see what it was, and now that I'm working at Europe, which is a corporate not-for-profit organization, I definitely did my research and noticed that, they have a white CEO, but at the same time, everybody on the board is a person of color, basically. Somebody that has worked or been in the community that has tried to help and make change. So you have to be very, very aware of the choices that you make and who you want to work for based on the people that you're serving, right? So if I really want to make a difference in my community, am I going to work for a person, or am I going to work for myself, or am I going to take from certain institutions that I know that I can build within the community and reallocate those resources throughout everything?
Right. So, but but do you get the sense, at least I do, that some of these not-for-profits are intentionally exploitative of marginalized communities who need resources but lack resources? Like, almost like, what community can I go into today and exploit? Because I know I can come in as the white savior and like pretend I'm doing something, but yet I know that there's a buck to be made. Like, it's more like, it's almost like when I think about pharmacists or like the what the fuck is the name of this? The pharmaceutical industry. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Like, they know that the pills are not going to help us, right? But you still get a buck. They're going to get paid for this pill.
Yes.
Whatever we're taking that day.
To answer your question, yes, I do think that there are people that I think some organizations or some corporations are definitely unaware of it because of the white savior complex. They're just unaware of the fact that they're doing too much at that point. But
what do you mean unaware?
I think some people just don't know that they're doing it. Like, there are times where white people will come into a space and think that they're trying to do something to help others, but not know that they're being a white supremacist or a white savior at that point. I think sometimes it can be unintentional, and other times I think it is intentional. But it's a fine line. I don't think every single person does it intentionally. You sip your tea.
I don't know. No.
Like, it's because you have Karens, right? We have Karens, and we know those Karens that will do it with intention because they honestly believe that a person of color will cause harm to them. Then there's people that are just scared based on their lived experience that they don't know what these people will do to them. When in actuality, they won't do anything because nobody's bothering you in the first place.
So okay, I kind of get like the analogy you're sort of trying to connect here. But when I think about somebody who's going into a community,
Yes.
with their white saviorness, right? Their white savior, whatever.
Yes.
Right? I can't imagine that they're saying to themselves, well, I'm going to go because I really give a shit about this. Because I'm sure most likely they don't live in a community with us, right? So they're going to go into the community, provide this service, create this thing, but yet they know at the end of the day, they could be making some bank on this. I mean, they just know. Like, how could you not know? How could you? Like, they're going to know. They're not going to know. They're going to know. They're not going to know. They're going to know. How would they know?
Yeah, I get you.
And we never know.
No, I get you. I get you. I completely understand where you're coming from.
Okay. So when we're thinking about the not-for-profit that you brought up, right? When you're thinking about the different examples, how has that in your experience impacted you as a worker or as a person who serves the communities that you serve? How has that impacted you?
I think that's made me want to advocate more.
Say more about that.
Okay, so
before advocating, because that's the solution part, right? Before that, how has it impacted you as a worker? Because I know you just went to the solution. So before we get to the solution, what made you want to advocate more? What was going on in your body? What did you feel? What did you experience?
I get tense, man. So I get really agitated by certain things, right? So I guess you could say
And look, and don't mind the sun is setting on my face.
it's all right.
I'm in the attic.
It's okay. It's good. You good.
I'm like bright. Like I don't know what's going on here. You see like the legs of the light. All right,
when I think of how it's impacted me, I've been frustrated, right? I've been to a point where I personally feel sick to my stomach. I honestly believe that when people are put in a position where they're told you can't do something or you're not good enough to do it, that it impacts you so negatively that you want to change and prove them wrong, right?
Right.
So for some reason I always have this thing of authority, right? I've always had it, and it's funny that you mention it because when I was talking about Gateway earlier, it was one of the that I felt like targeted me, right? I was the guy that was always somewhat outspoken. I always did something different. This was a place that I never necessarily needed to wear a certain attire, right? But one day out of the blue, because the CEO didn't like me, I swear to you this day, I swear to you, he did not like me. He made a policy saying that you can't wear hats anymore.
What? Just to target you?
Yeah, because I was the only building wearing hats. I was the only one in the building wearing a hat.
So you know that was the backlash for being outspoken. He was already dealing with the backlash.
Yeah, so I would like find loopholes. Whenever that person was there, I would definitely I'd put on a hat, I'd just put on a hoodie, I'd do whatever it was just to spite them, right?
Even though now you was working against policy?
Yeah, I didn't care.
Oh, so you was rebelling.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
And I didn't see that as a solution. I just saw I'm gonna push your buttons. I'm gonna continue to push your buttons until you hear me, right? And obviously that didn't work because not too long after that I left.
But I think that's interesting because when you think about like proverbial Sue said it was bad business.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about because it sounds like you was in a space, you were showing up as yourself, you was outspoken, and so the impact obviously of being outspoken is now I'm being retaliated against ultimately.
Yeah.
Right. So now you saw these sort of policies being made to like basically come after you, right? To show you, to say that you're like insubordinate or something. And so in that struggle, how did that sort of leave you in your work? Because I can't imagine that you're dealing with this backlash or this retaliation, right? This low key retaliation, um, and it's not sort of impacting how you get to do your work.
Well, I think it's tenfold, right? So this impacts the field in the sense that they feel that they can tell us how we can live our lives and how we need to treat, heal, and protect and reclaim our identity. And when it comes to things like that, you kind of you kind of lose sense of yourself. And I honestly believe that you just want to be able to be yourself, and you're not
Yeah,
be yourself, and that's the worst part.
because that's your asset. That's what you bring to the job, to the work, is yourself,
Yeah,
right?
especially
Because as people who are serving our community, the self is the tool. Well, if we
that
don't have that, what else do we have?
we don't have anything.
Right? We just our hats, right? And
Yeah,
so thinking about how that impacted you, how did that trickle down to the clients that you was working with?
I think it they knew it because I'm very expression like I'm very expressive. So
Yeah.
you see it on my face, you know I'm irritated, and you like I'm gonna be mad. I'm just gonna be, and you know it took me a long time to learn, or even now I still struggle with it, like my sense of self, right? And speaking with clients, speaking with individuals, speaking to students, it's I have to be aware of myself, right? And in order for me to do that, I have to be able to put myself in a calming space. And that's something that I'm trying to learn and reclaim at the same time.
Because of that last position, do you think that that's stuck with you, like that sort of questioning of yourself?
Yeah, that's always been. I mean, that's why I even wear my beard, man. It's like because we've been told that we needed to look a certain way. You know, it's our it's policies and that's steeped in whiteness.
Mm.
Idea that we needed to be clean cut. This idea that we needed to look a certain way. Like I love my beard because it's a part of me. It's a part of my heritage. It's a part of the way I look. I look this way so I don't look white.
Right? I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like you're not gonna sit out here and tell me that I don't like I look I'm not white. I'm not white, so don't call me white. Don't it's like yeah, I'm a what light skinned Puerto Rican Sean King. That's what I'll call myself. That's right.
All right, all right.
That if that's the case, because my mom's dark and my dad's light, so like I'm in the middle. What do you want me to do?
Right. Yeah, I hear you. So like it sounds to me like one of the impacts that and then we could go into talk about the advocacy, and this sort of blends into the next prompt because I feel like it's sort of connected, because
Yeah.
the next prompt is how have you ever addressed white supremacy in the workplace? And I'm sure there's in the mental health field, and I'm sure that this is probably like part of that. And so right, am I like off or am I with you?
No, I think you're right.
All right. So what I'm hearing as one of the impacts is like almost like because when I think about like the idea that we question ourselves as professionals, we all understand that as imposter syndrome, right? But when I think about imposter syndrome, I don't think imposter syndrome is a natural reaction that we get because we get into spaces. I think it's a response and a reaction to the actual space, right? So it's almost like that space that you was in sort of forced the imposter syndrome into you, right? It was not even because naturally you probably would not have to sort of deal with that sort of that vibe, right? But here
Right.
you are in this sort of space where white supremacy is alive and well, right? And so they're making you confused about who you are, making you confused about what you bring to the table, making you confused about your assets, right? And then we think we have imposter syndrome because now we start doubting ourselves. But really, that shit was, you just forced that shit into me. You know what I'm saying? You just created a situation where you want to do mind fuckery with me and then make me sort of question myself. And it sounds like that was one of the impacts that you are probably still in based on what you just said.
Yeah, I think this is really you're right. You know, imposter syndrome comes from being in this space, like being in white spaces. Um, I never feel uncomfortable when I'm with my friends. I never feel uncomfortable when I'm with family, right? Unless we're talking about white supremacy, then obviously then I gotta shut them down. But when we're talking about like comfortable, like I'm comfortable in my skin, I always feel uncomfortable in white spaces. You're right, because the idea is to assimilate, right? So once you're in a white space, you have to be able to navigate through whatever it is that they're talking about. You have to change your dialect a little bit. You have to speak a certain way, because if you speak with a certain twang, they're not gonna like it. They're gonna think you're speaking to them with an attitude. I speak how I speak. You don't need to correct me. My mannerisms don't harm you in any way, shape, or form.
Word.
I'm BX all day. There's no reason why.
No, real talk. And I think that's the thing, right? I think, and it's so when we talk about the racial microaggressions, right? There's so many. It's like so many. It's like everywhere, right? That I think about my experience at Rutgers University and working at the counseling center,
Yeah.
and I mean, if you could like, look, I've been called aggressive so many times just because I was advocating on behalf of Black and brown students,
Right.
and Black and brown colleagues. I mean, I felt like the way they spin narratives about me, right? And I'm like, this is the counseling center at Rutgers. We're not at fucking White House. What are you doing? What is this? It felt like this intentional effort to demonize and villainize me because of who I was in the space. And I refused to conform to this white standard that they said that they wanted me to conform. Not saying it overtly, right? But covertly it was said, right? Over and over again, like how we're supposed to show up in spaces.
Right.
And then the amount of Karens that I was surrounded by was the most profound experience I'd ever had. And so I remember I started questioning myself slightly, right? But then I realized, after I kept bumping my head against these situations, that I understood that was white supremacy, which is when I realized that the imposter syndrome was forced into me. And so when I'm thinking about every sort of way that they try to have us assimilate, is intended to make us feel confused, right? It's intended to make us feel, doubtful about who we are as human beings and what we bring to the table. And it just sounds like that was and I feel like it stained you in some way based on what you were sharing now, that you still sort of question the self.
Yeah.
Right? That's the impact, the residual impact that happens even afterwards. Which our white counterparts don't even understand and get the work that we have to do to deal with that and manage that.
So you're right. It did stain me, because at first I would just leave and go to another organization, right? And I think that's what makes it intentional. Like after getting my degree, I wanted to make a conscious effort to go somewhere that was at least holding themselves accountable, and being in spaces where I feel like you can't relate to my experience has not benefited me, right? It's been a point where we're looking at, how can you help me? Like, we're always in social work, we're taught about networking, making connections, being around people that have similar lived experiences in which you're able to connect with. So that way everybody has or fits underneath an umbrella, right? But the thing here is that white people can't relate to us. White people don't know and don't want to relate to us. They want to control everything that we do. And those microaggressions are what hold us back, because we need to be able to be okay with what Master says.
Word. We gotta make sure we follow the plantation rules.
Yeah, and it's like we can't do that. We can't do that. In no way, shape, or form can we do that. And that's why I think social work has always helped me to get to a point where I feel like I need to be able to speak up about certain things. Because listen, like, I have siblings, right? And I'm the oldest. And being the oldest, I feel like I need to be a voice for them too.
That's right.
I need to be able to speak up for them. Like, we're different shades. So obviously I need to be able to speak for them or speak with them about it. And if they're not ready to speak about it, then I'll have to be ready to speak about it.
Right. And so and thinking about this particular example from the last position you was at, one of the positions you was at in the past, Can you be specific about some of the examples of white supremacy that you had to speak up against and advocate against? Like, because that's the part of how have you challenged white supremacy. So was there something in particular that you sort of saw as something off in that particular organization, and you said, I have to challenge this or sort of be an advocate against this? That led to the backlash initially.
Okay, so I feel like when we talk about speaking up against white supremacy, I think I've only recently been doing it, right? I think before, like I had mentioned earlier, like we would avoid conflict. We avoid conflict because, or to some degree, like obviously I'd be an asshole and just like wear my hats and do whatever I want to do in certain places, but not necessarily speak up to the point where I feel like I have a voice. And I think that's why I wanted to go back to school. And the only way I can speak out is by learning more, right? To be someone with my master's degree in social work, I felt like I needed to show that I am capable of speaking up and talking about this issue. By going to get my license, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do, to show you that I'm going to do that. Maybe possibly getting my doctorate. What if I go and do that? You can't tell me nothing once I'm a doctor. Nah, you can't say nothing.
Can't say shit to me.
Not at all. And I think that's one way to counter it, you know, being somebody, because we don't listen. How many people of color, Latinx, indigenous, or black people do you see, black or brown, right, that you see with those degrees and are still oppressed? Many.
Well, I mean, I know a few people that are with those degrees and are still oppressed.
Exactly. But
yeah,
when you have that, you are now the target, right? You're even more of a target, are you not?
Well, I don't have a PhD, but I do know some people that, okay, because I feel like the degree is an interesting, I think we talked about this before, right? We had a conversation about this, about the degrees and stuff. But it's like that Jay-Z song on the 444 album, right? It don't matter what you got, right? The world is still gonna see you as the way they see you. Yes. And I think PhDs and even master's degrees gives us a false sense of this we get like we somehow arrived when in fact we never did, and we're never going to. Not in a white supremacy context.
Right. And the idea here is that it has nothing to do with me arriving. It has to do with me constantly learning. And that's what social work is. You're constantly learning and going through certain phases. Now, what I'm talking about is it allows me to get to a platform to speak on it more. And if I can speak on it more, then somebody out there is going to listen to me.
And they do listen if you have a PhD, they do listen with a different level of attention. It's
right.
Just
right.
And even though you're still black or brown.
Right. But the thing is that somebody that looks like me, or that looks like you, or that looks like people in our family, somebody's going to listen.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You know what I mean? And that's what I intend. I'm not here to list for white people to listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not here for them to try to, I want them to do better, but I also don't want them to think that I'm a savior for it either, because I'm not. I'm here to talk about our lived experiences and how we're able to move forward, because we want to move away from what it is that you see as controlling us and oppressing us.
Got it. So now with that being said, and for the sake of time, because we're already past 8 o'clock, and, you know, people start getting itchy, they need to go back to Netflix.
I'm
good. The sun set on me. Hey, sun, thank you. That shit was bright, right? It was like I felt like I was the sun. Like I was just, the sun was out of my mouth.
Listen, you want to know something? That means you shining down on us. That's all it is.
Oh, that's what I was doing? Okay. Yeah. So, to sort of one final note, when you think about this conversation, and you think about white supremacy in the mental health field, or white supremacy in general, can you think of, or is there something in you that you see as a solution, like an idea or a thought that maybe you can share with our audience members, that could be a possible solution to this sort of ongoing ethical dilemma and this social injustice that continues to harm so many of us?
Yeah. So I think there is, you can only bring the community together if you have unity, right? So if we're able to bring each other together, then we're able to have a fighting chance. And the idea is, I know that separation is always like an idea that's thrown out there. Yeah, but
You mean separation of like who? Between who and who?
oh, I'm talking about getting all the white people out.
Oh.
But
So
like,
you mean between all of us, all races?
yeah, like
Oh, okay.
and I think it could definitely be geographical, you know. It can, culture, ethnicity. It's spaces that we're in, right? And I really want our community to build up this idea of unity within each other, so that way you can fight with each other instead of against each other on this. Because in order for us to move forward, there has to be awareness, and you have to be willing to be aware of the situations and why it's happening, and hold people accountable. You have to hold people accountable, and the best way to do that is to take away those people's platforms and allow them to not speak for us. They shouldn't have a voice for anything that we do.
That's a big task.
It is, but
It's a giant ass request.
it's got to start somewhere, though, right?
Yeah, it has to start somewhere. And I really and I think these are these are also the types of conversations we could be having. But I think unity would be excellent. I think if everybody could just get around in a circle and smoke a joint, you know what I'm saying, and be at peace with each other, that would be beautiful. So I just want to thank you for being on this episode 10 of Unpacking White Supremacy in the Mental Health Field. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it again. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it again still. But I really appreciate you, Jaran, for showing up. And I don't want to say it. I feel like I said like orange in Spanish. Is that what I'm saying? No. So you know what I'm saying, right? How you say it? Is it naranja? How you say orange in Spanish?
Naranja.
Right. So I didn't want to like confuse it with that. So I really appreciate you, my brother. I think you're dope. You're awesome. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I really, I respect the fact that even though you still feel like you're finding your voice, that you're still giving it a shot anyway. You know what I'm saying? You're here speaking your truth and speaking about what you witnessed and experienced. And I think a lot of people can learn from that. And I think we need to keep sharing, right? Keep talking about these things, because a lot of people in the workforce, not in the mental health field, just, only the mental health field. We talk about across, different fields that we go to college, get degrees and go into. And then we are shocked when we start experiencing ourselves feeling some of the experiences that you have, right? Which is feeling like, you're retaliated against or speaking up, or people are trying to make you speak a different way. You can't even show up this way or that way. So, right. And that's something young people especially are not prepared for, because no one tells us. Just go get a degree and then go out there and live your dreams. No one tells us about all that crap we got to deal with, which is a second job.
Right. It's
so,
true.
Yes. Thank you. Do you have any final words for the audience, our audience of 4? At this point, there'll be other people coming. Show they come.
Yeah, it's cool.
They look at the replays.
Yeah, we got up to 12, so it was good.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We got up to 12. We got us.
Pretty cool.
No.
I want to thank you for this opportunity, for having me here. I've never really done anything like this, and I really appreciate the opportunity that you've afforded me, and I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart, bro. It's reciprocated, especially with the idea that we're speaking on something that's really important, especially for our community.
Thank you, my brother. So appreciated. If you want to find out, the replay will be back on, right, for maybe the next 3 days or 4 days or maybe a week, and then they'll delete it. But again, you can find the replays on YouTube. You can go to theliberatedself.org. / Unpacking White Supremacy, and you'll see all the videos there that have been uploaded to to YouTube. And so you'll enjoy this video as a replay for a few days, and then they'll delete it. So
all right, I screen recorded it too, so we're good.
Beautiful. So thank you so much, my brother. Have a great night. Shout out to your wife who also participated in the conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, bro.
And be safe.
You too.
Peace.